Hi, my name is Ellie Blair White, and we're just getting to the juicy part where the agents contacted me last February 16th. And they told me, look at these spooky little lines. And they opened up the page. It looks like an EKG, and half of the addresses, IPs, countries, phone numbers, everything are from Russia, and they say directly to Mr. Putin, and the other half are from the CIA. And they keep using the phrase CIA, 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 that they're CIA agents. However, as anyone knows who's ever called the FBI and said, well, I want to tell you something, but I want to make sure this office handles it, not some other office, because I hear the guys in such and such office are corrupt or won't investigate it, immediately the agent on the phone will say, I'm sorry, we need to disconnect this phone call now, and they will slam the phone down on you. Try it. Try it 20 times in a day, getting a different agent at a different office in 20 different states, and you will get the same answer every time. As soon as you say that you told a certain agent something, or that you can't tell a certain office about something because they have ties with the local community, they will say, I'm sorry, I need to disconnect this phone call now, and they will slam it down on you. So as far as getting into the agencies and finding out where the corrupt individuals are, all you have to do is pick up the phone. Because the low levels will do whatever the big boys tell them. And you got to get rid of the low levels that will suck up like that. And then you got to get to the big boy that's making those orders. And I know exactly how to flush out that person. And then you'll have something. But I did 18 cases for the FBI on my own, catching bank robbers and, cyber internet porn kings, guys that were buying and selling and raping on film little tiny 4-year-old girls from all over the world, posing them in nasty poses where you can see everything, and filming themselves entering little tiny 4-year-old girls from all over the world. Any third world country's game, cheap to buy little kids. And they were just absolutely heinous. And the pictures that I saw were bad. The pictures that they found in hidden folders were 10 times worse. And man, I cried for weeks when I saw those. The ones that I saw were so horrible. I was upset for a couple of days before I made the journey down to a local FBI office and give them the computer and tell them what I found. And they said, well, we saw that you went back on a second time. Did you go back on a second time? And I said, well, yes, because I was so shocked the first time, I immediately, turned it off, and I called some people and asked what to do, but I didn't know how much information you would have to have in order to do warrants and all that mucky stuff to actually get the person. So I went on one more time so that I would have more in my memory that I could tell you that I had seen. And, I put myself and my family in huge danger. And at one point, one of the guys in one of the rings called up and said, I'm on my way to your house right now, and I'm going to tie you up, and I'm going to tie your little girl up, and I'm going to kill first all your pets right in front of your eyes and make you watch, and then I'm going to kill you guys. And I called up the FBI guy and said, you need to get him now. I want out. I'm not doing this anymore. They had me go to his office and home and pay attention to where he was putting what so that they could make out the warrants appropriately. And then they ransacked the computers at his work and at his home, and they forgot to include a laundry basket that he kept in his back seat full of shit, and so they missed a whole lot of evidence. Somebody bought somebody off, and the case ended up saying that he was just looking at pictures of little boys. It didn't say anything about him making photos of himself entering 4-year-old little girls from every country on the scene. And so he went to prison for a year. But if the community knew about the pictures of him doing things to little girls, not that just he was, happened to go on some porn sites on the internet and was looking at photos of little boys, they'd be pissed. They would be pissed to where he would not have made it out of that prison. I don't know who bought him off or what. I fully volunteered. I want to be notified when this goes to court. I want to be able to testify about what I found and what I saw and what I did. And I was never called or never informed of any of it. And somebody paid somebody off. to get him off the hook. And his uncle, who is the DNR and wildlife person at the time for the area, knew about what he was doing because he went and put certain controls on the guy's computer. And when he gave it to me for certain work, I couldn't go on almost any site in the universe. It had so many, traps and locks and controls and stuff on it. And so he took the computer back and removed all those and then gave them back to me. And he made secret these files that were, make you throw up, disgusting. And the file that I found was supposed to be his vanilla, not so bad file, and it was putrid. So I worked on that and under great threat to my own life. And when I traveled to Wyoming after leaving that area, I took the computer to several different people and made copies of the hard drive on a different computer, which had letters in it from Dave Zien to different friends talking about their Vietnam experiences and how they had thrown women and children on the ground and had their feet holding them down by their necks and rifles pointed at them and basically, shot them at close range like an assassination style or something. And they were bragging about photos that they had taken and that they had passed around to different people and how he needed, those pictures back. And he called me the day we arrived in California, the day before we got notification about an assassin on our tail, and said that he would immediately fly out to California to get that computer back from me, and was screaming and all putrid and upset. And how did he know that we had spotted those letters on his computer that he had given me? I worked on it a number of times at his mother's house, with Mom at home, or at his house, and then he gave it to me, and I kept working on it. It wasn't until I took it to a couple of individuals and had a copy of the hard drive made, and then I called an FBI office in Wyoming, told them what I had, and he wanted to see the evidence for the bank case, and he wanted to see the hard drive that had this letter bragging about war crimes in Vietnam between he and his point man, Dan, who lived in a duplex across the street from the retirement center in Cornell, Wisconsin, and his license plate says point man, and he was the head of the FDIC in Eau Claire, an unmarked building downtown near Ron Peters' real estate, and kind of the back of this little shopping center, this plain white door. And they said they had heard about him raping and terrorizing dozens of women, and they were happy that he was no longer a part of them and they weren't responsible for him, and we're just glad he's not here anymore. And how did Dan know about all of that? Dave know about all that. Except that I had discussed it all with an FBI agent in Wyoming, and she promised that absolutely no one there is corrupt or under any negative influence, and I swear if you send it to him, this will all be confidential, and he'll get back to you regarding everything. And it was just a few days later when David called me threatening me. So apparently the FBI agent had called him and told him what was on that hard drive and that he found it all. And David called threatening us and was just absolutely livid. And I just told him, well, the computer went black. I don't have access to anything. Whatever they have it all. And he somehow let off from charging after us. But he's not the kind of person that let go of anything. And he told us that he only registered as a Democrat because our county Chippewa was showing as being registered 98% Democrat. So he switched from being Republican to Democrat just to win the vote. And his policies were definitely, not anything that any of the local Democrats wanted, but he was quite the obnoxious show person. And the neighbor, the guy that ran into me, and the $1 million a year poster child for the law person who was to represent me, the motorcycle lawyers in Milwaukee. And when we went to go for our first hearing, it was a deposition. The guy had not spoken to me at all ahead of time, and I went into too much detail on something, and he should have charged them and somebody else. And she said, you know what, you might win this case, but I'm going to get you on attorney malpractice, and your ass is mine. And so he was talking to her afterward while we were still there, and invited her to go and talk with him. They were going to have a meeting at his motel room. And he asked me to get a copy of my MRI disc and bring it down and drop it off to them there. And when we tried to for the next 3 days in a row, the phone just kept coming up, not accepting any phone calls. They put the phone on hold. And so he wanted me to know that he was in that motel room with the opposing female attorney for 3 whole days. And then when, of course, I told the court, what happened, what is this, that nothing got done on our case, and all of a sudden he's shacked up with her in this motel room for 3 days, I basically played right into his hand, and he got himself dismissed as the attorney on the case. And I talked with some attorneys in Wyoming, and they said, Simpsons, and they said, you need to call them and explain about the stroke and the accidents and everything that you had, and that you're incompetent to be your own attorney. And when I went down to talk to the judge about this, they let me read little snippets from something I had written ahead of time, because I didn't have any short-term memory at all, at that point, and it was hard for me to say something and remember what I had said or not said, as you can tell by the content kind of jumping around a little bit on these videos. And she had something in her bag, and I said, well, if she applied for this hearing because of something, and I never caught a copy of this, and she's got it right there, I can see it sitting right there on top of her stuff, why can't she serve me with it now? Why can't I see what it is that's been said? And he said, I can see that you traveled in great pain to be here, and that you're, hurting bodily wise about what's going on, but I have to dismiss the case. And I never got a reason or anything why. I never got served whatever document was that she had given him. And the attorney that had been my attorney up until he got dismissed, was Dave Zine's poster boy. They paid him $1 million a year to say, I ride my motorcycle and I get insured by this firm. And that was who he said I should pick to have represent me, even though all these fancy big attorneys wanted me to do the case. Because he said with his political and other influence, he'd be able to babysit it, make sure that they did a good job. Well, they did a good job for his neighbor, who paid him off, and who paid the hospital $2 million to have a suite named after himself or something, after Swanson operated on me. So, the political whatever spreads far and wide, the corruption. But it followed me from Wisconsin, where Kowalczyk sheriff said that we're going to have to postpone these hearings, and then later said, well, nobody was there. Nobody wanted it. So we sold this, $1 million farm for $53,000 to the bank. They were the only ones that were there. So they made a bid at what the loan amount was, and there you go. Which was a complete lie. But Kowalczyk ran that. And he ran a neighbor kitty corner to my farm, submitting a fake unpaid bill so that as money was changing hands, he could make an extra $4,500. And he's the one that went to the other farm and said, we put in a notice that this is going to go to foreclosure on Saturday, and the very next Wednesday, the house was already seized. No trials, no hearings, no nothing. We found out about it that day on Saturday, prepared all the answers, filed them Monday morning when the courthouse opened, and a second time before 10 o'clock, and still on Wednesday the house was gone. So there's no way for that to happen. He also oversaw the IRS being called to take away $100,000 of the fraudulent first right of refusal money from Miss Jean Peck, and he oversaw that sale, which happened on Wednesday, which also no buyers showed up for. When I went to the farm number 2 to have my goods removed before the sale date, there were no goods on the farm. Everything had been removed, every stick of paper. They would not give us any information on where it was. They said, oh my God, we forgot, but we just decided this property that we foreclosed on a year and a half ago, that it really did contain the house, not just the acres. So we came back and you weren't here, so we just took it. And if you want these couple belongings that you must have forgotten or just left, just come and get them before the sales date and you can have them. Well, those couple little belongings included all of our clothes, freezer, pantry. My bedroom had $25,000 in antiques alone, and it was, 4 stories and 5 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, stock full of stuff, gold chandeliers and, cases of crystal. Everything in there was antique, fully dressed like a house of 1700, with foot-thick butcher block tables and floors that I had just redone in birchwood and wool carpet, Italian marble, and fireplaces. I mean, I had made that into the epitome house that I could ever want, and everything that we owned was in that house. Our underwear, high heels, winter gear, coats, everything was in there. It wasn't just we left a couple things and it looked like we ransacked the place and left. Everything was in there. We had animals that were there. Their neighbor was taken care of, and he was threatened and told to leave the property. And that's in the land sale conspiracy series, the new land fraud scheme of the 1%. It's all in that book. It's all screen ready. You could literally tear the pages, pass them out as scripts, and make a movie of what happens straight from here, as you can with the Paris Bataclan attacks book, which is the terrorist massacre at Bataclan, Paris. And that's this book right here, and the sociology of a terror cell. And I studied that family for 16 years before the attacks happened, and I was typing and clicking upload on a book when all of a sudden it came on live satellite, and I watched the whole satellite viewing of that incident live as it was happening, not little clips later, not somebody's analysis later. I watched it all live and proceeded to read 1,000 personal accounts per day as I was writing that book. And it's also exactly in their conversations of what happened and who dropped off who and who did what all night that night. And I clicked upload to the Paris Bataclan book to the publisher. And before my finger was even on the upswing from that little click, the news flashed on satellite and said, Abdus-Salam has just been captured. So it's extremely timely, and there's a lot of details in that book that have not yet occurred, and for which every country should certainly get and read in that book at their very, very, very earliest convenience, because there are ways that countries can avert and throw off the intended results of what people are doing. And my story, although it happened in first Wisconsin, and then we heard about what happened in Wyoming, or a little bit of it, and then what happened as we came to California, and we're in in California in Big Bear for 24 hours when that officer broke into our back door and was going to kill us, and the 911 lady operator saved us. She had 50 firemen from 4 different stations in my front yard in under 2.5 minutes. So the reason why that officer was picked is because David Wilberdies, Wasserman, Schultz called the local sheriff's department and said, Who is your gray officer that handles all your gray matters? And you saw in Wisconsin, the wrongdoings were all handled by Kowalczyk, the head sheriff. Even the 2 judges that were paid off, and the 3rd judge whose son was sent into my house, into my bathroom, throwing my kids down and trying to get in there to rape me. And Mark Gunderman, the local newspaper editor, convinced me as a favor to that judge, the man's father, to drop the case against him, that he would send me a sincere apology and make amends. Well, my apology was, I will not disturb Miss So-and-so again, and that's it. No fancy letterhead, no nothing. The requirement of him apologizing and making amends wasn't very clear, however, but I send this video out as a plea to the father to help orchestrate or facilitate the proper judges and attorneys coming forward to help me to win in this case, that I will be able to have some sustenance now being handicapped. And yes, I realize all attorneys, look at my front and say, oh, you don't look handicapped to me. And they never even make it up to my eyes, or what's happened to my back, or the fact that I could only say 4 words a day for 2.5 years and had no short-term memory. And I told my kids, I said, I'm sincerely blessed of God that it was the short-term memory that got lost in this massive stroke. And they said, well, what do you mean, Mom? I said, it could have been long-term memory. And every time I look at you, you'd have to explain to me that you're my kid, because I wouldn't know who you were if it was my long-term memory. And the jaws just, dropped in shock. But it was every time the person that intervened and helped several other people jump on the cart to get some of the money that was flowing around. Since we're going to assess her with these charges, we'll just pay out money to anyone who puts their name on the list. Even though I put letters refuting claims of these people, they were all paid. It was payday for anybody that wanted to say anything bad against me, and the sheriff made sure, Kowalczyk, that everybody knew that. And when I went to Wyoming and officers jumped through the window with their bodies laying over my daughter on her bed under the window with guns pointed at her, and they threw me into a solitary isolation cell for 23 days, again, it was the sheriff's. And we fled a second time, and we went to go to California, and 24 hours after we arrived in California, I got 4 officers breaking down my back door and saying that I have weapons and a hostage, and they're going to break down the door and shoot us both. Again, it was the sheriff's. Now, I was promoted by the local Catholic Church to go and talk to the local watch commander about what had happened, who also happens to be a sheriff. And we'll get into that in our next set of this video. Thank you so much, and please make sure you watch the ending on this. You won't want to miss it. And as you can see, I paid by selling my own clothes last weekend. What was left of them, what wasn't stolen by the every 2 weeks sheriff sponsored and purported break-in. Again, contact me, Ellie Blair White, at buffalostudy@yahoo.com or paypal.me/buffalostudy@yahoo.com. If you can please help with anything that will help us to get a vehicle to get out of this area, to go back to doing missionary work,